So really, Kathy Heenan with BRPS Titles. We love you guys. We send you guys as much title as we can on a refi, on a purchase.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So Kathy, you've been doing this for a long time, like 20 something years, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So whether someone, well, whether the clients get a loan or not, let's talk first about just in general from the title perspective. I would love to hear just the things that y'all have to go through, and then we can mirror some of the things that lenders have to do. So what do people need to know?
As far as on the purchase side, you know, in the state of Texas, you're either married or you're divorced. There's no, you know, I've worked in other states too, and there's legal separation, everything. We don't have that here. So in Texas, you have to, if they're purchasing a home, you have to address the spouse in some way. So if they're in the process of getting a divorce, they want to buy the house in their own name. It's not that they can't, but if they're not divorced yet, when you go to refinance or sell that house in the future, you're going to have to deal with that spouse again. So if you really need to wait until the divorce is final to proceed on your end so that you don't have any future obligations with the ex-spouse.
And that's for the purchase.
That's on a purchase.
Yeah.
Correct.
So from the lender's perspective, just to mirror that, when you're getting a loan anyway, you've the legal spouse, and you're right, people put on our application separated because it's an option, but we have to change it. I'm like, if you're legally married, you're married. So in Texas, there's no in between. So if you have a legal spouse, they have to sign the deed of trust and a couple other documents, probably documents for you, acknowledging that the spouse is getting the debt. Now, we don't have to put them on title, so we won't put them on the warranty deed. Correct. But they have to show up, like they have to be there, or we have to get power of attorney for them or something. So they're going to know what you're getting. And some people are okay with that, and some people are not. They either can't find the spouse, I've had that happen, or they live in another country.
Or they don't speak or with each other, or
So I think, so the biggest disconnect that we get is that, you know, if you ask an attorney, and this is not legal advice, by the way, for anybody watching, but an attorney will tell you, oh yeah, you can just quit claim deed it right there at the closing. But lenders really, I've never been able to do that in the 25 years I've done this. It's very hard to, because it has to do with homestead rights. And I would think that's what you're concerned about, right? And what you guys are doing.
Yeah, that's why we have them sign too. I don't, they're saying they can quit claim it at the closing.
Or do something, do some kind of an immediate, like, oh, they can just release their title to it right away. I'm like, well, we're not putting them on title. They're just signing the deed of trust saying that they acknowledge that you're taking out this debt. It's not.
Correct. And the concern, the concern is homestead right. Well, and if you're married, you know, there's a whole conversation about whether community property and that kind of thing. But the main concern for us is, so say they're in the process of a divorce and they decide, you know, he buys a house and they're intending on getting divorced and they're in the process and everything's going great, and they get back together, right? So say they decide to cancel the divorce and they're, you know what, I'm just going to go move in with him in this new house and everything's great now and whatever. Well, now you have a lien that is not perfected because she lives in the house and didn't sign the deed of trust. Mm-hmm. So she is, she, whoever, the other spouse has homestead rights. So we need to make sure our policy guarantees you as the lender that you have a foreclosable lien. So in order to do that, we have to include that person in the transaction.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So we have, actually, just a quick side note, we have a couple that we're helping right now, and they're separating, and they're both going to go, they're selling their current house, and they are purchasing 2 new properties where each of them is going to live. So we're doing one as a primary, and the other one we're doing as an investment, because they can't, you can't have 2 primaries. So they're not officially divorced. So one of them, they're going to, you know, she'll sign as the legal spouse. She won't be on the note for his, but she'll have to sign. And then the investment property, So, you know, it's interesting, and every situation really is different. But I think the main thing that I want people to understand in Texas, other states, you'd have to check there, but in Texas, both title, to give a clear title policy, and the lender, and that's probably why we demand it, because we want that clear title. The legal spouse has to sign just a few documents. One of them, the main one, being the deed of trust. Let's see, what documents are? They're like 4 or 5 documents, right? So it's like the deed of trust. So the non-purchasing spouse signs the deed of trust. What else
From our perspective, it's just the deed of trust. I mean, from your lending perspective, I think you might have a couple other documents that you would prefer for them to sign.
Yeah. Okay. Just those couple things. And of course, on a refi, it's the same thing. On a refinance, and definitely the rescission documents, you know, like on the 3 days to rescind and all that. So awesome. So no in between. It's really super simple.
It is here, which is good. I mean, the either divorced or married thing really helps out here in Texas, because it makes it a little bit clearer about what needs to transpire. And I know people want to jump the gun and, you know, the divorce will be final in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but I've got this contract and everything. We go through that a lot, but it is what it is. And usually they can manage to finagle through it to either get the spouse to sign the deed of trust. And sometimes it takes a little bit of talking to on why we're requiring the deed of trust, and explaining to them that they're not on the note and that kind of thing. Just pointing out those things, just so they're aware of what documents they're signing, and then we advise them to speak with their own attorney about it. But
yeah, absolutely.
I have a question. So if they sign the deed of trust before they're divorced, and then they're divorced, what happens, like say in 4 weeks? Does that change, or is it still there forever? Like,
you can, so once they're divorced, if they would like, then the ex-spouse can sign a deed over to the other one saying it's yours as a single person, right? So they would say, Kathy Heenan deeds it to Scott Heenan, and it would say single person to a single person. Now you don't have to track down the ex-wife after that. So you can do that if you would like to, but the divorce has to be final, and you have to, if there's anything in the divorce, so say that happens and they sign a deed and they file it of record, and then 5 years later the guy goes to sell the property, who owns it? The divorce still has to be reviewed, because was that deed that she gave him subject to any money that he owed her, right? So in the divorce, did it say, okay, well, he gets the property, she's going to sign a deed over to him on that property, he got his own property, everything, that part's fine. But did it say in there he gets the property, but he owes her $7,000, for anything? So at that point, we would have to review the divorce, and we would have to get proof or an affidavit from her stating that money did transfer hands. She did receive that $7,000. You can't have outstanding items in the divorce. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it where the property goes to the ex-spouse, but then the other ex-spouse retains paying the mortgage. I mean, it gets super complicated.
It does, yeah.
So what we recommend when we're telling people this, number one, if it's amicable and,
that's the easiest.
Yeah. Then, because if it's not, they're not doing it. Usually I say, well, then hurry up and go get divorced so that we can do this. We literally closed one time on someone. The divorce, I think, was final and recorded like the day before. Like the ink was barely dry, and we closed the next day.
Yeah, we've done that quite a few times.
Yeah, but so we tell people, like, look, what you'll want to do is work with your attorney to write in the paperwork that the spouse has a certain amount of time to refinance it, for example, because if both spouses, this is a big thing that we see, is that we'll see it on somebody's credit report. So let's say I pulled your credit, Kathy, and it was on there, and you're like, no, that's Scott's. We've divorced, and it's his. It's not mine.
Right.
So for the loan purposes, as long as we see it in the decree, we won't count that debt against you. However, let's say that sorry, Scott, if you're going to watch this, let's say you were late. Let's say you just didn't pay your bills. So it affects your credit. So we've seen spouses that aren't responsible anymore, but they just they couldn't refi because maybe they can't qualify or get a loan
Right,
or
yeah.
whatever. And then the remaining spouse's credit is tainted, and they're like, oh, no, it was in the divorce decree. It's not my fault. It's like, well, sorry, but you were obligated on the note. Like, the lender does not care that y'all were divorced. This
Correct.
civil court doesn't talk to or renege, So
Correct.
it is complicated. So if spouses are on the note together at any point in time, and then there is a divorce, you've got to mandate that spouse to refinance it or sell.
Yeah.
Like, if I was getting divorced, I would get the spouse pre-qualified and say, before the divorce is final,
Right.
let's make sure that he or she can get a loan.
Right.
So that we're not later
yeah.
on, we put it in a divorce, but if 6 months later the spouse can't get a loan, what does it matter, right? So you got to check out beforehand that they can qualify. So it gets super, super granular. So we see lots of different things.
Yeah, we do too. And it seems like every time we get another one, something new comes up, like a new, what they've set up in there, or something, out of the box or something different, which is fine. We just have to follow whatever the terms of the divorce are. That's what we have to follow, especially, on selling. And when they eventually sell, we have to follow all that very specifically. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about when they sell. And thanks. Susan popped on. Thanks, Susan. You can either unmute or chat if you have a question. This is Kathy with BRPS Title, and she's giving us what the title companies go through. So let's say someone is selling. So tell me about that. So they're selling, and what happens?
So it's the same thing. So if they're going through a divorce, they're not divorced yet. They both have to sign the contract. They both have to participate. They're both sellers. We do have situations where they've both agreed to sell. They've both agreed on the price. They're fine closing, but they want their money or their proceeds escrowed until the terms of the divorce are worked out. I have one currently that I'm holding on to escrow money right now and at that point, we do an escrow agreement, and the escrow agreement, it either needs to be that they both agree to whatever the disbursement is, or we need a court order determining what happens to the funds. So usually we can handle it that way, but most people, if they're already divorced, we have two options. So say husband and wife get divorced. In the divorce, the wife gets the property, but never got a deed from the ex-spouse at the time that they got the divorce, which is very common that we see that the deed part doesn't get handled at that time. So if that happens, we do have two options. So we can either get a certified copy of their divorce showing that the wife got the property and record that in the real property records, as long as there's verbiage in there for to divest them of title. So as long as the verbiage is in there and it says that she gets it, then we can go ahead and record that. Or we get in touch with the ex-spouse and say, hey, we need to get a deed, it's in your divorce, and they sign a deed. So typically we have to call the sellers and have the discussion with them, because sometimes they say, oh yeah, we still get along, everything's great or whatever, just send him the deed, he'll be glad to sign it. And that's the easiest route. Sometimes they say, no, I don't want to deal with her. Go ahead and record my divorce in public records because I can't deal with her. I'm not calling her. I'm not, whatever the situation may be. So it's really a preference on their part on which route we go, but we could do either, whichever they prefer. Some people don't want their divorce recorded in the real property records. Not that it's not accessible anyways, but some people don't care for that, especially if there's child issues and stuff like that in there. So, and I get that, but then we have to get a deed. So it's just a preference thing.
One or the other. What do you do if one of the spouses, I had that happen this year where they go to sell a property and the spouse doesn't live here. Let's say they've been deported to Mexico. I had that happen. So you can't find them, or they can't cross the border, and then notaries have been closed. No U.S. embassies are open,
Well, if they were divorced here in the United States and the divorce is filed, and we can get a certified copy of it and it says that the spouse gets it, then fine. But if not, you have to track down that spouse. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So one way or another, you're going to find them. And it is difficult sometimes. Years ago, there was a situation too where a guy was selling his house, and he said he was married to this lady for like, I don't know, 6 months or 8 months or something like that. She was like a mail order bride or something like that. He's like, I have no idea where she is. I think she went back to the Soviet Union. I said, well, unfortunately, you have to find her before we can close.
Did you find her?
I don't know that I don't think he ever found her.
So he never
I
sold?
don't think we ever closed. No.
I mean, then you can't ever sell your property. What if they married in a different country and it's not record in the US? Like, what if they married in the foreign country? And
it doesn't matter where you're married. If you're married, you're married. So I mean, just because if Scott and I, even if we weren't, if we lived in another country and we were married there, we came here and we lived as a married couple and we had said we were married or whatever, you're still married. You don't have to get remarried in the United States to be a married person. Does that make sense? So it doesn't necessarily, people say that. They said, oh, well, they didn't get married here, so it doesn't count. And I said, well, yeah, it still counts. If you're married, you're married. So,
well, I mean, like, just thinking it through, like, what if they are married in the other country, but then the spouse comes here to the US and portrays themselves as single on their tax return and everything they do is single, and the spouse has never lived here, like never, like has never come here, can't get in the country.
Then we would never know. There's no way for us to, we don't search marital records, right? So at that point, it would be, the seller signs affidavits at closing saying, hey, I'm a single person. I've been single the entire time I own this property. If there's nothing that shows that this person is married, and then somebody pops up from another country and says, hey, well, we're married in Mexico or whatever, that becomes a legal, if there's a claim, that we would refer them to underwriting. And I don't know how, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know how they work out that part of it, but I'm quite sure it goes back on the spouse who signed all the affidavits warranting that he was single.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Yeah, there's so many twists and turns,
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I don't think, I think we've covered pretty much everything regarding divorce. I don't know if Susan, if you have any questions, just pop on. I did have a question not related to that while I have you.
Sure.
Or Susan, did you have a question? Do you want to go ahead?
Oh, no. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Which Susan is this?
Oh, Susan Masiha. Sorry.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which one.
Yeah.
I do have a question about, let's say two people live together and they're not married and they're both on title. Let's say the house is free and clear, so they were able to add girlfriend to title. And he wants to do a home equity loan. So is there a problem doing a home equity loan as a first lien when he's got someone else on title he's not married to? I was told yes.
That there's an issue with that?
I was told by a banker, yeah. Is there an issue from your perspective of title?
No, if she's signing, she would have to sign the home equity deed of trust as well, though. It would be him as a single person and her as a single person. They both reside there, right?
They both reside there, but the loan is only in his name.
Yeah, as long as they both sign the deed of trust, I don't see where the.
Got it. Well, I don't know why we would put her on the deed of trust, though, because they're not married, and so we wouldn't put her on the deed of trust.
But she's vested in title, so you would have to have her sign on the deed of trust.
Got it. Okay.
She doesn't have to sign the note, similar as a married couple, but if she's vested in title, she has to acknowledge, like, hey, I know there's a loan on this property. I may not be obligated under the note.
Got it. I think that's why this lender, I couldn't do it for some reason, and then I was going to refer it to a banker friend, and I think it was just too complicated, like too much in the gray area. So he's like, no, we're not dealing with anything complicated right now. The market's too busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like, forget it. Because it's kind of from a lender's perspective, it kind of clouds title really, or clouds homestead and all that. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I don't have anything else regarding title. I got to go drum up some more to send you. And Susan, Kathy is amazing. She's at VRPS Title. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what y'all do and what makes you guys the best?
Well, I have been doing this for a very long time. I've been doing it for 29 years now. So coming up on 30. So I've been doing it a long time. I do have some experience, mostly in Texas, but with other states. And So one of the things that is, I feel is a good resource, I've always worked for an agency and joined BRPS on purpose because we have multiple underwriters. And so I really like to be able to have the options. Sometimes you go to one underwriter and they say, no, I'm not going to do this. I had a situation just the other day where one underwriter looked at it a totally conservative way and the other underwriter said, there's no problem with that. So it's definitely a benefit to us. But one of the things that I think that we are very strong at is if there's a problem, we want to find a solution. If there's any way for it to get it closed, I'll go to multiple underwriters and have discussions with them because, like I said, they all have different opinions sometimes. And some will say, well, yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, but from an underwriting standpoint, I'll accept it if you get this affidavit, or I'll accept it if you get this. So I try and offer those suggestions to them and offer them ideas of options, like, can we do this? Can we do that? To try and get anything closed that we can. And then just being available to our agents if they need remote closings or whatever. Of course, we're happy to go anywhere, do whatever. The goal is to get it closed for everybody: the customer, the lender, the title company, everybody. Nobody gets a completed deal unless we all do. So whatever we need to do, we're happy to arrange.
So on remote, well, I know that you go to quite a bit of them. These days, a lot of people are remote, but do you go when you can? And if not, do you send a mobile notary, or what do you do?
Correct. Yeah, I do. I try and do as many as I can myself. Of course, it's real busy right now, so I can't do as many as I would like. But I try definitely, of course, to do all my, resales in person for sure. But if I can't, I do have a notary that I've worked with quite often. She's fantastic. And we communicate perfectly and communicate well. And I'm always available by phone. So even if she was there and they have a question, I get right on the phone with them and we take care of it right then. So it's worked out actually very, very nicely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, we've really had a great experience with you a lot. So we really appreciate it. You've been doing great.
Thank you.
We don't know how the sausage is made, girl. We just know that it's smooth. We don't want to know. We don't want to know. We just know that on our end.
Can you do this? Can you fix this? Yeah.
Well, but it is, the relationship between title and lender is so important because we've had, when the title company is not good, it destroys. It's
a struggle. It is for sure. Yeah.
Very complex. So how often, just one last question, I've always been curious. So y'all order from so when a title order comes in, tell me just in a couple of brief steps, what happens? Like so what do y'all do?
We order it from examination.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so we order it from examination. So the escrow team takes care of the closing and the file and the whole 9 yards, but there's a separate examination. So you have another person who does the examination, reviews everything, and provides a commitment. And that title commitment is our code to everything for the transaction. It tells us, who's vested and what we have to address in order to be able to close on the transaction. So once we get that title commitment in the meantime, we've already ordered tax certificates and we've already got other stuff going in the meantime. But once we get that commitment in, we can really launch forward because we can see what we're dealing with. Sometimes you get a contract and it says this guy's the owner of the property, and then you get it back. Like I have one that I got back this morning, and it's one lady on the contract. She's selling, but there's 2 other people in title with her. That didn't come up until I got my title commitment. This particular deal, it worked out fine. I mean, they said, oh yeah, they'll sign, no problem. So I have to add them as sellers to the contract. But just to be able to get that in my hands and be able to see, okay, what are we dealing with? Did the seller say they have 1 lien to pay off, or the borrower in a refi, did they say they have 1 lien to pay off, but we've got 2 liens on title? We've got to get all those things shored up and cleaned up to be able to close. So we push forward from there, get what we need. If the commitment comes in clean, which we call clean, and we're all on the same page, it's just a matter of getting the taxes, HOA, and payoff in, and we're ready to go.
Gotcha. And how long are y'all taking to get from the plant or the examiner or whatever it is? How long from the time you open that up? What?
To be honest with you, during the last 5 or 6 months or whatever, it varies week to week, which is tough on us. So we did add another examination option like a week or so ago, and it was taking longer than we expected. So it's right around 3 to 5 days right now, depending.
Yeah. That's awful.
Yeah. So occasionally there's something, if they have court work they have to order or anything like that, sometimes it can get extended, but we're trying to push to make sure, like, hey, if that's the case and it's going to be extended, make sure that you let us know so we can let you know. Say, hey, normally we would have had it by now. They're waiting on a divorce. They're waiting on a probate. They're waiting on whatever it is to be able to finish up the commitment. So, and sometimes we try and get them to push out the commitment and make it subject to review of the divorce or make it subject to review of the probate, which at least we can get something out to y'all. You know what I mean? So that you can see that, that one item's pending. So we try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you for coming on today. I don't think I have any more questions. Susan, do you have anything? I think she's still muted. I would take that as a no. Well, thank you for talking divorce or separation and title and loans. Super interesting. It's something that people don't think about, right? There's so many different stresses and stuff. So, well, thanks for all you do, and thanks for coming on with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. We appreciate you all as well.
Yes, ma'am. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Legacy Mutual Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity lender. The opinions expressed here do not reflect those of Legacy Mutual Mortgage.